Good evening and welcome to Momentous Live episode 98. Getting so close we can taste it. I'm Tristan Jutra.
I'm Tasia Custodi.
I'm Gray Williams.
I'm Will Silver.
And you can find out more about us at Momentous here at momentous.tv/links. This time I'm only going to leave it up for a few seconds and then I'm going to take it away. Here we are. We got the band back together, all four. I love it. Must be two moons in the sky. We got a jam-packed episode, EV heavy, and maybe one hydrogen vehicle, and then maybe one hybrid vehicle as well. The excitement is people can barely contain themselves. All right, but first, before we get into that, as always, we have a little bit of follow-up. Last week we talked about Apple's update to the big boy HomePod, the second generation, and now the reviews are starting to hit the web and YouTube. And it's funny because The Verge was saying, oh, Apple is playing it safe, and Engadget is saying that it's a smarter smart speaker and it's much better than the first. And it's hard to know exactly what to believe, but for those who are in the market for, $300 US smart speaker, the HomePod is, just a little bit better value than before. It's still got the great sound quality. Series may be a little bit smarter, definitely faster than before. Looks pretty much exactly the same. And still has, that same price tag and the limitations of Siri. But Gray, what is one of the key things, protocol-wise and radio-wise, that we've got in the new big boy HomePod that we've been waiting for?
Oh, Matter. Good old Thread, good old Matter. It's exciting to see that these new technologies are being integrated in there. Looking at the ability to work across ecosystems. So for the folks out there who have, Google devices and who have Amazon devices and who are using different smartphone platforms, this is the big deal. Right? The interoperability of smart home stuff, not having to add certain home bridge components, things like that, rolling your own servers. This is going to change the way that I think a lot of folks to see smart home. It's going to take a lot of the difficulty out as well. So I'm looking forward to getting my hands on one of these things eventually. I'm kind of stacked for speakers right now, and I'm kind of stacked for smart home stuff. So it's like, I don't know, maybe if I build an addition on the balcony, but otherwise, I'm gonna have to sell one of these things first, and I don't know if I'm gonna get a whole lot of value for an original HomePod.
Well, the great thing is that the original HomePods still sound pretty darn good. And aside from apparently a higher than average failure rate, which was maybe one of the reasons we discussed this last week, one of the reasons why Apple kind of discontinued them and didn't really make any more. Apparently one of these ones sound, even though they have fewer speakers, five tweeters instead of seven as previously, still have the subwoofer as well, but they still sound great, and apparently they sound even better as stereo pairs, like amazingly well. One of the other key little improvements is more easily removable power cable for those that care about that sort of thing. One thing still not present that was desired by a lot is no auxiliary input. So this is not a dumb speaker in any way, shape, or form. So, if at some point in the future support goes away, maybe you could still use it as a Bluetooth speaker, but you cannot use it sort of like some people are still using the, what was that weird iPod speaker, Apple Hi-Fi, right? And some people are still using that as a dumb speaker because that's what it was. It has a 30-pin connector, and there's still ways you could keep enjoying it. I'm not sure if it had an aux input per se, but the HomePods, they're smart only, and only as smart as Siri can get. So Apple's still leaning into the sound quality. The Siri's getting slowly smarter over time, but really focusing on the smart home with Matter and Thread, as like you mentioned there, Gray, and using HomePods just like you can with Apple TVs as a keystone, a cornerstone for one's smart home.
Why would you besmirch my iPod? 30-pin still lives.
There it is. Hey. I'm looking for a reason to use my iPods, but everything's in the phone. Moving on to our next little bit of follow-up. One of the other fun stories we talked about last week was the doomsday clock and the dramatic announcement of moving a little a little closer to midnight, 10 seconds closer to midnight. So now that we're at 90 seconds to midnight, and we talked a little bit about various aspects of that. But for those who are genuinely concerned, Wired has an article that describes how you might be able to survive a nuclear blast. Should the worst come to pass, hopefully it won't come to that. But key takeaways is get as is far deep and and far away from the incoming wave as possible. So if you're in a home, if you have a basement, go to the basement, go to the back of the basement. Maybe it didn't talk about it in this article. Maybe get some potassium iodide tablets because that helps prevent your thyroid from absorbing radioactive particles. It's not a panacea. Again, this is the sort of thing that is a remote possibility. But for those who may be concerned, and if this makes you feel a little bit better, take a look at this article from Wired, and
the other thing that article says.
Mm-hmm. Tell us
that nuking the fridge might work. So get yourself a lead-lined fridge.
Key insight thanks to Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. All right. Got any old fridges kicking around? So that's it. That's just a little bit of extra follow-up there for those who are paying attention to the precipice on which we teeter. Moving into our news stories. Now we've got a collection. We've been gathering for a while. We tend to do theme episodes here at Momentous Live, and we've got a whole lot of automotive stories for us. And we're going to dig into a couple of them. We're going to gallop through a bunch because there's a whole bunch of different sorts of vehicles, and we're just going to, maybe pick the ones that are most interesting to us. But to start off, just talking about the seismic shift that seems to be happening with customer dealership networks. One little story from The Verge talking about how Ford corporate is demanding its dealers get serious about EVs. And 2/3 of the dealers say that they're in. And you can imagine that there may be some dealerships in parts of North America, particularly more rural ones, where maybe people still are skeptical of EVs, especially range-wise, charging network-wise, and whatnot, and not to mention the price. So it's one thing for all us, coastal elites to be talking about spending, $55,000 to $75,000 on, some of the better range EVs, but that's not entirely doable for folks. We've talked about the benefits of looking into lower ranged used EVs as well. But that's just a little indication of some of the pressure that's being pushed onto dealers from their corporate overlords. And in a related story, Ford is also slashing the prices of the Mustang Mach-E just not too long after Tesla dropped some of their prices. And there was some controversy about some of the Tesla price drops because there's people like, I just bought a Model 3 or Model Y or whatever, and the prices dropped by 15 grand. Like, just welcome to the world of technology purchases. Cars are computers on wheels now, and that's how a lot of tech people have been feeling about their purchases for ages now. Unless, of course, you're a big Apple fan, because Apple doesn't tend to drop their prices very much. They will charge you the premium for a machine that is 7 years old, like the 2013 Mac Pro, right up until the point that the new Mac Pro came out a couple of years ago. Same goes for the current Mac Pro until we get the new Apple Silicon version. Apple doesn't tend to drop, but some companies do. We see Samsung with their smartphones, for example. After a few months, all of a sudden you're getting Samsung Galaxies 2 for 1 and stuff like that. And it's just kind of the way of the world now. As the production efficiencies improve and some of the costs come down, especially with supply chains getting into better shape, there are some cost savings that are being passed along. But unfortunately, those who've already paid up the big bucks, there's not much in the way of recourse for them. All right. Any thoughts from any of you before we move on to some of these specific vehicles that we're going to be talking about? Oh, all right. Ready? Very, very quickly here. we're going to start with the 2023 Chevy Bolt. And as we go through these, I know that you've all looked at them previously. Take note of the ones that speak to you. Chevy Bolt, $27,200 US version. Lots of people love the Bolt and its predecessor, the Volt, which was a lower range EV that Chevrolet had that was more of a sedan. The Bolt, more of a little hatchback kind of guy. 27 grand, not decent range, 249 miles, 398 kilometers, pretty decent, 27K. But it looks like pretty much every other little hatchback slash crossover out there. In other news, we have Toyota with a new Corolla, but it's on hydrogen. And they're going to still, the Toyota has the Mirai, which is kind of like almost a compliance car in California. You see a few of them around once in a while. They're going for about 20 grand Canadian in the used market. I think we've got maybe our fourth hydrogen station in the Greater Vancouver area now. It just opened up on the North Shore. I just drove by it earlier today, so that's exciting, as hydrogen is another option for storing electricity as opposed to batteries. So there's the hydrogen option that still hasn't gone away. The Hyundai Kona, the latest mid-price EV to get a glow up. Kona's been around for a little while with a few different versions, including the plug-in hybrid, and now it's the full EV version. Looks kind of cool. I mean, we're seeing these light bar headlights really making, becoming more mainstream now. They're going with the LED looks like we've seen with the Ioniq 5. We've got the Kia EV6, which we talked about last year. The GT trim has come out now, and it's got a lot more oomph. 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. 576 horsepower. I still don't like the rear end of that one. Hyundai's Ioniq 6, the next one in their line, we had the Ioniq 5 that I just mentioned, the Ioniq 6, which almost has some Porsche vibes to it from its looks, a little less boxy than the Ioniq 5, known as a streamliner sedan, 361 mile range on that one. Sort of a mid-tier option. And then we just recently had an announcement from Polestar, which was sort of a spin-off from Volvo. The Polestar 2, which again, I don't know about you, but I'm getting Mustang Mach-E vibes from it. But it's got estimated 300 mile range and all sorts of great features. Lots of buzz about the Polestar 2. The 2023 Prius hybrid. So again, we're talking about mostly EVs, the occasional hydrogen, and the occasional hybrid here, 194 horsepower. But look what they did to the Prius. It is not embarrassing looking anymore. It is almost attractive. And of course, people on YouTube and all over the web are talking about, like, wow, a Prius that I might actually consider buying. I mean, we're really getting into the era of future cars, right? Like the kind of vehicles we may have seen in Minority Report and whatnot. But the Prius, it had a couple. The first generation ones were very strange. The second and second 2.5 generation, again, fine. But they and the Nissan Leafs always had that kind of weird sort of dorky appearance, and people who care about the aesthetics, they were having to go up all the way to a Tesla level, and that's out of reach price wise for a lot of people. Luckily, we've got a lot more options now, but this is really stepping things up from the Toyota Prius team. And then Genesis, which is the high end mark of Hyundai, showing off their Genesis X convertible concept, which was being shown off last fall in Los Angeles. It's almost got vintage Ford Thunderbird vibes. Again, interesting stuff going on with the front light bars. Not sure how I feel about it, but again, it's nice to see some variety, because with limitations of aerodynamics, cars tend to look so samey. So they're trying to mix things up with some of the lines. Sometimes you can do things with optical illusions, but then things like the LED lighting and whatnot. So those are still yet to come. That's still a concept. And then Stellantis, which is the what do you call it? The abomination of a collaboration between was it Nissan and Fiat and Renault or something like that. Anyway, they're relaunching the Lancia, which was a design from or a car from the 70s, I believe. Radical EV design here, and I mean, this looks like a spaceship more than anything. I'm not sure what's going on. These are the kind of concepts that we don't see actually hitting streets for a long time, if ever.
Literally.
And by the time
Ever.
they do, yeah, where are
What
the
a waste
wheels?
of money.
But they're
Companies
really,
are
these are
spending money on this all the
Yeah.
time.
brand
Why?
Does he just sit in the
exercises.
well in the middle there, or is that for R2D2?
So again, some of these things are design exercises, that were kind of showing what the future may hold for their brand.
I do exercises too, but I don't show people.
Well, I mean,
Well played.
it's funny. I mean, we've had this conversation before, like in the as regards like more of the tech world, like with smartphones and the like, and how Apple tends to keep their cards very close to their chest from an R&D perspective, whereas other manufacturers in the tech space will show things off more so ahead of time, or even just release things when they're still kind of half baked. And sometimes things work out. Maybe they take a few generations, whether it's the Samsung Galaxy Note or the Galaxy Fold. Samsung's actually really, really good at this, just kind of getting stuff out the door and then taking 2 or 3 years, letting some of the early adopters in the public beta test things. This is sort of different. I mean, concept cars have been a thing for years and years, and this is just kind of like the extreme version. It looks like one of those hover vehicles.
That's not actually a concept car. That's a sculpture. It's designed. They've said it's a three-dimensional manifesto that captures the pure and radical language. So this is a sculpture that is inspired by, or possibly inspiring, the design of these things.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then what we're watching right now is a trailer for a 3-part documentary.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, how deep does the navel gazing go on this?
That's why I said design exercise. Right? I mean, so much of this is marketing, just trying to position oneself as a leader, and this is what we've got coming. And with the sculptures like this will inform the design of our future vehicles. Now, back in the real world, we have what are actually some of the best-selling cars and EVs, and some of them are ones that we've talked about, such as the Bolt and the Tesla Model S, which has been, I guess the first very like mainstream Tesla model, after the original Roadster, still popular. The Mach-E has gone from 0 to 28,000 US sales. But look at these numbers here, 28,000. And even the Tesla Model S, 23,000. Those are relatively low numbers compared to like production runs of traditional cars still. So there's still a ways to go. But then we get serious. Tesla Model 3, 156,000 unit sales in the US. And then here we go, the Tesla Model Y, 191,000. And this is what Musk has been like, promising for years and years, like hundreds of thousands of vehicles being delivered a year. And they finally got there. Just as usual, it takes a little longer than they hope. So, we're still seeing Tesla dominate the top 3 spots, 3 of the top 4 spots volume wise. But the Mustang Mach-E and the Chevy Bolt pulling up the rear. So before we get on to the next chapter, from these vehicles we've talked about so far, Tasia, if someone put a gun to your head and you had to choose one, would it be a Lancia sculpture? Would it be a Chevy Bolt? Or would it be somewhere in between?
I think I'm going to go with the Corolla that runs on hydrogen-like gas.
All right. Tell us why.
I think
What appeals to you
that's
about
what
that?
I would do. I like Toyota.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're a solid brand.
Mm-hmm. Run forever. Just take care of them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. A Corolla is a good car. I'm not here to be fancy. I'm here to be reliable, but also not look insane or cheap. I just want
Yeah.
range.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's the two extremes. Yeah.
I just want a reliable vehicle.
It's being described here as normcore to the max. Is that how we could describe you too, Tasia?
Yes, exactly. I like that. Normcore.
Normcore to the max. Well, I mean, it looks
that would
practical.
be my pick.
Doesn't look quite as big as a RAV4. I know you've got your
No,
eye
and
on
that's
the
what I was gonna say is
RAV4
like
EV when it
I've
comes,
got an old RAV4,
right?
and like when I eventually kind of upgrade, so yeah, this kind of looks like almost like a station wagon meets
Yeah, it's like halfway
small
between a
sized
Matrix. Yeah,
SUV. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
halfway
But she's
between a
a little
Matrix and a
cutie.
RAV4. Yeah, little cutie
Yeah, she's a little
patootie.
cutie, you know, a little cutie patootie. And I think I like to sit up a little higher too. I don't want to be in like a car that looks like I could like throw my watch at it and it'll shatter, you know, the car, not the watch. So
Gotcha.
this is my
So,
pick.
so the vehicle might be talking about a little bit later would be your second vehicle then, and maybe somewhat less practical and somewhat lower to the ground.
The one, not to like give anything away, the one we will be talking about later is the dream vehicle.
We'll get there.
To end all vehicles.
All right, simmer down. We'll get there.
She's getting hot and
That's all I
bothered.
want. That's all I want in life.
All right, great. How about you? I know we've talked about some of the Rivian offerings in the past, but from these ones we're talking about here today, which tend to be mostly little crossover type things, and in a couple of concepts and whatnot. And which of these seems to be closest to your heart so far?
No, I don't know. I am actually finding this quite it's driving anxiety for me because there's so much going on with all of these things, and
Yes.
like range and hydrogen, and I used to work beside Ballard, and it was sort of like
Oh yeah.
you remember going to car shows, and like the future cars where the hydrogen area was always just had a bit of a weird feeling to them. Like, there's a weird smell in the air, and it's just like I'm having anxiety just thinking about having to buy a new car. I just paid mine off. So the best thing here for me is public transit. I can't even pick one of these right now. It's stressing me out. I might have to go like take a minute. There's just a lot going on there.
Well, that's the thing. It was kind of easier being a really early adopter in the EV space because there weren't that many options. Yeah. But now that things are finally, mainstreaming a little bit, now it's like going from being a Mac user to being a Windows user. Like, no, I don't want to choose from 90 laptops at Best Buy.
Yeah.
So I feel your pain. I mean, I've had to go through that very process with, buying a Windows laptop for a work colleague. It's like, oh man, here we go. I thought we were done with this.
Can't I just give you the Mac sermon again? I don't know. Looking at this, like honestly, nothing here stood out to me because it's just, it's possibly because I'm not coming from a place of need. Right.
Right. Well, that's why we're dreaming here.
Yes. You know what it is,
from a place of want, and nothing's pulling my want.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because you want to know why, Gray? Because this is why Tesla's leading the market, because they made EVs cool. Mm-hmm, there was like a cool factor. So yes, they were.
This feels like car shopping
if they were first, but like it was just like it was this new age cool thing. And if you weren't in the Tesla world, it's like, do you even lift, bro? But like for car, So that's what it is. Is like it's hard to pick because you're like, I don't want any of these.
Yeah, well, I think you've hit it on the head. This feels like car shopping, and I hate car shopping. Buying a Tesla feels a little bit like computer shopping. Tristan, you kind of hit this. All these are all computers on wheels, but they don't feel like computers on wheels. They feel like I've got a dealer sitting there whose manager has some sort of financing plan and undercoating them what to put on this goddamn thing. And I'm like, I don't want that. I've never wanted that.
It's because they're all coming from a place of need, like having to catch up and having to create these EVs now because with different legislations coming in, as opposed to when Tesla was, first coming out, everyone was like, what's this? Yeah, it was nothing was forcing him to create anything like that. It was like, it would be cool. So it's gotten stale is the issue. And,
On the bright side, it's like car shopping plus a 6 to 12 month wait for your actual vehicle when you finally decide. So
I'm actually going to go pour myself a drink. I'm going to be right back.
Oh, well.
Gray has left the chat. Will, you have to stay there. Will, tell me you're going to pick that futuristic, ridiculous
No,
A sculpture. Do you want to drive a
No.
sculpture? You can
Without
hover
wheels.
around.
no, I don't need another razor. I'm good. No, I there's a couple that I kind of liked. I like that. What was it called? The Polestar.
Yes.
A little
yeah.
bit more traditional.
Mhm.
You know, some of the stats seem pretty good. You know, 455 horsepower, which
Not too shabby. You
and-
don't want to feel like you're driving a robot vacuum, right? Something with a
Yeah.
little bit of grunt is nice, even if they've got to fake the sounds.
although, yeah, I wanted to go as it goes down the street, but no. On a side note, I have noticed. As you guys know, I walk a lot, and I have noticed that Tesla. I don't notice Teslas as much as I do other cars. Like I sort of notice when other cars are around, but I really don't notice when Teslas are around. They don't make that much noise, and I find it is kind of creepy. But that's a whole side note. But the other one that I like is that Genesis convertible.
Yeah, that's sort of a different
Yeah.
look, isn't it? Let me find
That
that.
But again,
Genesis
that's-
one looks like it has like those lights on the front make
Yeah.
it look like its mouth is like open, like ah! Like it looks
Yeah.
like it's like.
And it does
It's
feel
cool.
like a concept. Like that one's
Oh, it is indeed. Yeah.
a more of a functional concept than
Mhm.
that piece
Yeah.
of abstract sculpture that
With no
that
wheels.
It
Yeah.
does feel like the emperor's new clothes, though, when they show off stuff like that. Like, am I the only one who thinks this is ridiculous?
Well, I mean, that's the thing about concept cars, and this one is probably a lot more closer to reality than some others we've seen in the past. Is that even if they don't come to market exactly as is, case in point, some will they ever come to market like Cybertruck? They showed it off. It had no side view mirrors. There's some regulations they need to follow that require things like that, for example.
Yeah, but it already has a ton of like wait list for that. My neighbor put down the deposit for the Cybertruck.
Yeah.
But guess again, because it was cool. I mean, I think it's really ugly, but conceptually cool.
Well, and we were talking about Tesla, how early on they caught a lot of attention because they were so far ahead and then really pushing things. But now, I mean, Will, you mentioned you don't even notice them, maybe because they're quiet. But honestly, here in the Vancouver area, there's so many of them,
Yes.
and really. There's not a ton of difference between a Model S, a Model 3, a Model X, and a Model Y. They're basically the same shape, but a little taller, a little squattier, a little wider, a little narrower. And honestly, like no matter how great they might be, I don't know if I'd want it because it's just so common now. And maybe that's a personality defect on my part. I maybe be curious to get something a little quirkier, and I might be leaning towards something like that Kia that I mentioned with the ugly rear end. We've been really happy with our Kia Soul EV, even though it's older, but a GT one with 576 horsepower might make me want to keep living. So.
Do you have a problem with that, Tristan?
I know.
Well, it's just so. I mean, when it comes to
You're not
cars,
telling
right?
us?
Like you don't want to. I guess some philosophy is a car is a place to get you from point A to point B. Now, at the same time, we are human beings with flesh and blood, and we have certain we respond to certain things. And like, for example, the roar of an engine, there is a visceral feel to that. And maybe not everyone responds to it, but I know I do to a certain extent, and that's part of the fun of riding a motorcycle too. Like there's that, there's the vibration, there's the noise, you feel the power. Now driving an EV is a different sensation. It's still cool. It's almost more like sci-fi because you step on it and you go.
Oh yeah.
But it's so quiet. So it's a whole different vibe. So I might be going, taking the boring pick here. I just wish they would fix the rear end of the Kia EV6 GT. I mean, all of them look kind of the same, but the GT is the most oomphy of the batch. So now that we've got our picks out of the way, and we'll come back to gray maybe in a couple of weeks. Maybe, hopefully, less stressed about the choice. The last thing, well, the paradox of choice is a thing, right?
I'm making
The
my
more
last payment
options
on my
one
Mini
has, the
in
harder it
May.
is to decide.
I'm
What's
making
that?
my last payment on my Mini in May. I'm not buying a new car anytime soon. I don't even want to think
Exactly.
about new
Well-
cars. I love the SkyTrain. I love the bus. I'm doing that. I got a
All
bike.
right. So next up, again, no, I don't think any of us are going to be buying any cars anytime soon. We're just playing here. Speaking of playing, Tasia's going to drive this next one because this is all about her fantasy. The 2024 Chevrolet Corvette E-Ray is an all-season performance hybrid.
Okay,
Tasia,
I'm
give
gonna
us
pick
the
this one.
lowdown on
I want this.
Not
your
to,
latest dream machine.
Not to bury the lead, I am physically attracted to a vehicle. And
I mean, I kind of don't blame you. Look at it.
If I
I
could make
mean,
love to a car, I would do
I'm
it
just
on
gonna
this
say-
car.
Oh, that escalated quickly.
I'm just going to say it. This 2024 E-Ray
Yep.
is probably, because you guys know how obsessed I was, with say the Z06 and and then
yes, yeah.
yes, and then this baby comes out and she is a thing of beauty. Her paint has specks of gold dust in the paint. It's remarkable. There's in the center, I'm not going to explain this right, in the center kind of console area, say between your front seats ish, that's where the lithium ion batteries are. I think there's 4 battery packs in there, but you can switch all with your touchscreen between if you want to be electric or if you want to switch over to engine, and it'll switch immediately and you'll go from complete silence to listening to that sexy kitten purr, and she'll vibrate your seat. You know what I mean? Guys, we got
Now it's all coming together.
We've been content struck by YouTube many times, but I think this is the first time we're going to get a not for kids on our
vibrating seats, being attracted to vehicles.
Or we'll get more viewers like, hey, Jeff, you got to check on the lady that wants to make love to a car.
Beautiful.
It's sexy.
Yeah.
They understood the assignment. It's also their fastest Corvette yet, which is insane.
Okay. And so to clarify,
pretty
this isn't
remarkable.
actually a pure EV. It's a
it's a mix.
hybrid.
Yeah.
So any thoughts as to what GM's thinking is here and not going straight to full on EV? Do you think this is a stepping stone to a full EV Corvette? What are your thoughts on this? If someone blessed you with a 120 grand US to drop on something like this, would you jump on the hybrid or would you wait? If you could only buy one of the two, would you wait for a future pure Corvette EV, Tasia?
I would do the hybrid because you want that sound of the engine. You're buying that car, you're not buying it to be stealthy silent. I don't think. So, I would probably do a hybrid model so that I could rev the engine.
Gotcha.
Sorry, environment. I need to hear it. But I think that's what they were going for, was dipping the toe in the water of you don't want to completely turn people off, because the market that's buying that car is well, dude, I want everybody to hear and see me coming. So, because she's the most beautiful thing we've ever seen, and she deserves to be seen and heard. So I feel it's dipping the toe because they're realizing their target market, as we all age and grow up, we're all more aware of environmental concerns, but it's that balance of where do you meet that specific market. So I think that's really the reason why they didn't go, because there's no reason you couldn't do an all electric, but people would have been what's the point?
You still want to capture some of those semi-enlightened boomers, because given that those, for some, that's the type of car that they grew up with, and if it still has that actual grunt to it, it might have that more appeal, and it could be the gateway drug for the full-on EV version. Now, we had alluded to the Corvette Z06, I believe, the one that we saw at
Mhm.
2015 CES. Tasia, you and I had a close look at that. While we were doing that, however, Gray and Will had the opportunity to go and test drive the BMW i8, which was a hybrid. I mean, obviously we're talking 8 years ago, so the tech was in a different place, but again, very striking by its design wise, and pretty early on in the performance
Mhm.
hybrid case, and in that case, it was the hybrid not so much for the efficiency, but for the extra oomph. Gray, can you refresh us as to what that experience was like? And then we could get Will's experience on the back seat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting because I thought we were going to be driving the i3, right?
Oh,
Which is,
okay.
it's a
Slightly
slow
different.
jumper. Yeah. The current Mini electric is actually using the original i3 platform, which is a terrible idea, using older batteries, and just it feels like there's nothing that BMW will not do to Mini to make things just a little bit worse. But so I thought we were getting the i3, and Will, I mean, do you remember that sort of look I think that we gave each other when we were like the i8? I'm like,
Sure, sounds good.
are you sure?
Get the keys.
Yeah, I was just like, I'm.
That's the i3, and then the i8, different beast altogether.
Yes, yeah. So we pulled out on the Vegas Strip, and it's like it is extremely responsive. And I was a little timid right off the bat, and dropping the hammer on that thing is. It's when I actually decided that I wanted to go back to school for astronomy because I wanted to be an astronaut. That moment right there. I kid you not, got slammed back in the seat, and I was just like, there was a moment, we got to go back and find the footage at some point, but there's a moment there where you kind of hit peak acceleration and it's flying, and I'm like, I don't know how this thing's going to stop. And so I think, again, we'll have to go back to the video, but I recall him saying something about, performance tuned brakes. I'm like, oh, thank God. Because this is how we die. And we came around that corner back towards the convention center, and I was just like, I can never own one of these because it will be a very bad day. It'll be my last day. It'll be one of the days that I own it, the last day that I own it. But I'd have that moment where you're like, you know what? Screw it. Let's go. And just, yeah, it was an experience that got me into astronomy, but also into driving slower, bulkier SUVs because I thought I was going to die.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we saw some cool concept cars there that I'm actually surprised some of the components of the things we saw haven't really made it into our cars 8 years later.
So here's the thing, though. Look at hydrogen vehicles, right? Because we've been talking hydrogen vehicles for a very long time, and that's kind of what I was getting at earlier, which is when you go to an auto show and you see a hydrogen vehicle, doesn't that place always just feel like sadness? Like electric was like, yeah, and then hydrogen, we've been like, you've been talking about this for 30 years. I had one of those little kits that poops out water. It's not happening, guys.
Yeah.
But Tristan, you said the fourth station's open, so.
Finally, one per decade. We'll get there eventually.
Yeah. Sorry, Tasia, you were saying.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was this Mercedes concept car or if it was actually one of the BMW ones. I think it was this Mercedes ones, but yes, it was, with the lights in the front that project a crosswalk for pedestrians. Yeah. So because it was self-driving, it projects I mean just bits of that technology. I know we're all not fully autonomous yet, so we can't have these fully touchscreen interiors and swivel seats that face each other and nobody's having to drive yet.
No steering wheel.
No steering wheel. But those little ideas of it, now how the newer cars have, if you're going to turn a corner, the light shines to the way you're turning. Have you guys seen this?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's new to me because I drive an old car, but some cars have this. And so it's we have easy technology for things like this to make everything safer and automatic braking. And so we're seeing certain bits like this, but there were some really cool things in some of those concept cars we saw all those years ago that I was like, man, I just don't know why we don't have some of that yet in today's vehicles. I know technology goes at warp speed. We'll get there, but still.
It's only been
This
8
limiting
years.
charcuterie board that we just saw pop out was great.
Exactly.
That was
That Mercedes was the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like,
every German autonomous vehicle needs a charcuterie board.
Yes.
it needs to be like at the point we talked about this all those years ago, but like when we're all old and decrepit and we can't
know.
drive, that's our freedom.
Sure.
We need that.
I was thinking
to
a
get
mech
around.
suit. I'm thinking
Oh,
like
mech
the-
suit.
The one from the end of
I'm
Aliens.
on board on a
That's-
mech suit.
Right? Just some of the jetpack, screw the car.
So before we move on, one of the clips that you had sent over, Tasia, was iJustine showing off the Corvette E-Ray. And iJustine is a longtime YouTuber. She does a lot of Apple stuff here. What was her take on the vehicle?
Oh, I mean, she loved it and she wished she could have taken it out of the showroom for a spin, which I'm sure means another video is coming. And she will be out for a spin with it at some point. But she was quite enamored with it, for sure.
Looks pretty cool. All right, let's move on. Now, speaking of autonomous vehicles, how many years have we been talking about Apple maybe getting into the car game, and whether it was an electric car, just a regular electric car, or autonomous car, or maybe no car at all and just software, on again, off again, reorganizing, bringing Bob Mansfield back from retirement to shake things up. This has all been under the aegis of Project Titan. And it seems now that whatever Apple might do might not even happen until 2026 at this point. But if they're lucky, they might be able to squeeze it under $100,000 US. Gray, do you think we're ever going to see an actual Apple car? Or is this the ultimate in vaporware that, because car business is not easy. Just ask Elon.
I don't think we will ever actually see an Apple car. I think if we're going to see something from Apple, it's going to be like an Alphabet Google thing where there's going to be a parent company and a subsidiary company. I don't know that you can put the Apple name on the road. I just don't know that you can. I don't know that they're ever going to be able to build something that's going to meet their, high expectations. So here's the thing. The experience in computing and the experience in telecommunications is governed by two things in the user relationship, and that is the user and the provider of the device, right? You interact with other things, but when it comes down to a vehicle, the vehicle integrates a third factor, and that is other idiots, right?
It's like the social media of like physical real world products.
You get me. So looking at this, you think of like when people crash your phone because they've found a string of ASCII characters that can destroy the operating system, nobody dies, usually, right? They crash your computer because they've written malware, nobody dies, usually. They crash your car.
You can have a bad time.
This is not a space that, it's a wonderful space for them to explore. I'm sure some great things will come out of it. It may be that they end up being like Snap is to image technology right now, or they become a technology provider. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see more CarPlay. I'd love to see more Apple-inspired design cues. I'm not really sure that I want Apple in this space right now because I'm looking at it and going, do we actually need to live in a world, I'm sorry, Tasia, where we own individual cars to begin with? Because honestly, smart public transit. And here's the thing, I want you to
I don't
have your
have
Corvette.
that where I live.
That's what I'm saying.
I
want
can't
you
get
to have your
around if I
Corvette.
don't have a car.
But here's the thing, if we were getting to a point where we're mass producing stuff like a smart, public transit thing, where you've got vehicle to vehicle and vehicle to infrastructure, and the human being is not involved, great. But why would you pay for that as an end user? Convenience? But the whole thing, if we're looking at a system like that, a public option should get you there faster than a private option. So, no, I don't think we're going to see an Apple car. I think it's a terrible idea. And, yeah. So,
Now,
Tim Undercooked is what it is.
Now, of course, in certain areas, public transit is more of a viable option than in others. And then, then there's the the camping angle, which some people enjoy, and that's where your Rivians and your
Rental.
what's that?
It's a rental. Like
For sure, yeah.
I've looked at the cost of owning my Mini and the cost of gas, the cost of electricity, and the cost of parking. Owning a car is a terrible investment.
Oh, it's not an investment at all.
Right?
That's what salespeople like to tell you. It's an investment.
Yeah.
Any salesperson that's saying the word investment, oh yeah, this new OLED TV is a great investment, but it's not an investment. That's a depreciating asset, dude. So I get what you're putting down there.
You know, and here's the thing: like the vehicle as as something that we enjoy. Tasia, for you, I think is a wonderful, actually practical thing because it brings you enjoyment. We're talking about public transit not being available in a lot of areas. We're talking about like regionalized public transit, right? And statewide or province-wide public transit. But if we start to think bigger, right? If we start to think worldwide public transit, why we're this close to autonomous drone-style vehicles? Why would Apple make a car that rolls on the ground?
Not to mention the potential brand risk. Like one that I was just thinking, like, have you noticed how over the last few years Apple has been putting their logo front and center less often? With, for example, case in point being the new 24-inch, newish 24-inch iMacs that came out a couple of years ago, the AirPods Max. Neither of those have real obvious Apple logos. On the iMac, it's on the back, not on the front anymore, not on the chin. The AirPods Max, Apple logos are nowhere to be seen. So I wonder if they're sensing that if you could create an iconic enough design that people just know it's an Apple product without having to put the literally iconic Apple logo on it, that might be better. Because think about the bad press, the first time and any time an Apple autonomous vehicle gets in a fiery wreck and you see that glowing Apple logo flickering to its death and then melting. like the optics there. Say again?
Like grandma's apple pie, just crisping up in the... Yeah, no. Exactly. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And look at the attention that's paid to every time the Tesla quasi self-driving gets in an accident. Never mind the fact that it happens way less frequently than human drivers, but it's a story, right? It's a man bites dog kind of story, and the press would have a field day with Apple. So to your point, Greg, maybe they've run the numbers at Apple and it's like it might not even be worth it. Despite the fact that they've sunk tens of billions of dollars into this already. They could have built their own metaverse for that money, right? So they might just pull the pin because it's such a huge pain in the butt and the supply chain and so it's a question of maybe they've got they focus on the AR glasses instead, stick to their knit, what's a little closer to home to their knitting. Now that being said, if an Apple did come out with a car, if it was time for you to finally upgrade and you still believed in single car, in private ownership of vehicles, depends, if we're all on Soylent by that point and, we're not owning anything anymore and we're eating crickets and whatnot.
Living on Mars.
Would you be interested if it was, the price is always the thing, right? In an Apple vehicle based on your experience with Apple products today, do you trust that their expertise would translate into a vehicle given, the decade plus that they've been looking at this, especially if there was an autonomous component? Now I know there's the transporter thing that we've talked about before.
But just you're ruining my thing.
Well, we don't need to repeat the same jokes over and over again.
You have to remember my wife, she's heard my same jokes over and over again.
But even if it wasn't autonomous, there's the whole the ostentatiousness side of things, the brand side. Like, what would it take? What would it take to get you into an Apple car today?
Nice.
For your salesman. No, I think I'd have to see it. I wouldn't just buy it because it was Apple.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jamie, friend of the show, Jamie Reynolds, would be happy to hear that.
Yes. I'd have to know why I want an Apple car. And again, I've said over and over again about new technology, especially potentially dangerous technology. But I do love the idea of just like sitting in a thing and like reading a book. Like that's great, but that's probably may never happen in our lifetime. There's a lot of things that are going to have to happen for that. And I think even Elon said that, we're pretty far off in terms of computing power and all that kind of stuff. So I think we're far off from that, but that would be great. As Tasia said, it would, help as you get older, you'd be able to get out and do stuff and your car could just take you there. I'm scared of my mother driving. She's in her 80s. I don't like getting in the car with her.
What if we could get her into an AI?
Yes. So yeah, I wouldn't buy it just because it's Apple, I guess is the thing.
So if Apple's not going to do anything anytime soon, maybe Sony and Honda will step up. At CES earlier this month in January 2023, they showed off a concept. Sony and Honda have shown other concepts in the past, but here we've got the Afeela, which I don't know if I'm feeling that name, but it was roundly mocked on social media, partly for the name. The looks, it looks like it's been it had all its polygons smoothed out.
That's the front of a Sony Blu-ray player, straight up. that is a Blu-ray player.
Where's the eject button? Get that tray out.
Right.
And one of the key features had to do with the grill, and it would have different lighting configurations to do things like express emotion.
Oh man.
Now, I'm not sure what they're actually thinking here, but Tasia, are you at all intrigued by what Sony and or what Honda are having to do? Because they both have been pretty quiet in this space. I mean, Sony has never really made cars before. They've done lots of robot type stuff, and Honda's been like uncharacteristically late to the EV space in general. And despite the fact they were reasonably early with hybrids, with the Honda Insight, which came out around the same time as the Toyota Prius, maybe just a year or two later. So they're playing catch up here, and then they're partnering with Sony, and it's going to be a super multimedia experience. The inside is quite wild. Do you think it's going to be too little, too late from these, this tech and automotive heavyweights from Japan?
Yes.
All right.
You stole mine.
I mean, who's running around being like, I gotta get that Sony Honda car? Like, right. Nobody's like, couldn't wait for that collab.
The extended warranty mobile.
Exactly the thing is like, what is it these people need to do everything? Like, do well at the things you do well at.
You need a vehicle to get you from A to B, says the girl who wants to make love to a Corvette.
On the way from A to B. Like,
on the way to A to B.
That's multitasking.
Just saying. But like realistically, like exactly you don't like, what are you talking about? Like, I just need to get the groceries. That's it.
Okay. Well, let's move on from that. And just one last thing. There is apparently word is the stick shift might actually survive the electric revolution. Somehow we've seen paddle shifters in gas cars, and some of those are moving to EVs now. But some people want to have that stick shift experience, and we're talking about like the Dodge Charger. It was one of the last gas vehicles with a stick shift, but the Porsche Taycan looks like it's got a gearbox that has a couple gears. Traditionally, EVs have a single gear, right? So you're not really in control as much. And that's one thing some people like, is to be in control. Is this something, I know, Will, you had mentioned that you were a fan of driving manual transmission cars. Is this something that would you pay extra if and when you do move to an EV to have a stick shift option, to have that tactile feel to the driving experience?
I would say that so right now I do drive, my main car is a stick. I took some doing to get the stick. It was about 16 years ago or something like that. I had to wait for it. My wife drives an automatic, and that's fine, but it does feel like driving a go-kart. I don't feel as much in control, but I've been driving a stick for 25 years. Hate to date myself, but I've just gotten used to it, and I do like it. Now, having said that, I know the obvious thing, and as you say, Tristan, is traffic, right? Now, most times, if I'm driving like through town, it doesn't bother me. Maybe I've built up, I don't lift, bro, but maybe it's just I've worked up those calf muscles, those torque,
one
those
arm,
leg
the one leg.
muscles. Yeah, but if I'm really in stop and go for an hour, like if I'm on the clutch constantly, yeah, my leg does get tired, and it's happened a few times. But I mean, I think literally it's maybe a dozen times over 15 or 16 years that I've had my legs hurt because of the clutch. So, I mean, I enjoy it. I do feel like I have more control. I feel more involved in it. It feels like a more pleasurable experience. But I'm not opposed to driving an automatic. I do drive an automatic. I just feel like, whoa, man, I don't have control of this thing. It's just kind of going. Like I'm just strapped in for the ride. Like I don't know where this thing could go there. I don't know. So I just feel more in control when I have a stick. But
Fair enough. Gray, anything to add to the automatic versus stick experience? Are you a stick man or?
Great question. So I actually like the Mini has like a Tiptronic thing where you can do the manual shifting without a clutch. I mean, like the bike's manual, right? And that's fine. I guess yeah. Let's bring it along. Just bring that sucker right along.
For the illusion of control.
The illusion of control of an electric vehicle. It's a metaphor for life.
Yes, I have the illusion of control in the rest of my life as well. So why not carry it over to an electric vehicle?
Well, you
Perfect. All right. Well, someone who actually has been given control, James Gunn, as announced a couple months ago now. James Gunn, the director of the 2 Guardians of the Galaxy movies so far, and the Peacemaker TV series, among other things, has been given the reins for the DC universe. He is what Kevin Feige is to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. James Gunn will be to the DC universe now. And he had a little video that got posted talking about chapter 1 of the DC universe over the next 10 years. And they're calling it Gods and Monsters. Now, he made sure to say that they're still all in on the next few DC movies that are coming out, and sang the praises of such movies as Flash, Aquaman 2. What's that? What's the Beetle one? There's
Blue Beetle.
Blue Beetle as well.
They're doing a Blue Beetle. How can you have Blue Beetle without Booster Gold? I mean, I see that they're doing a Booster Gold. Was it a show? But man, you got to have the two of them together. That's like peanut butter and jelly, man.
Well, maybe that's the plan. So the in this recap video, they talked about TV, animated, and theatrical releases. Creature Commandos, an animated HBO Max show. Waller, a live-action HBO Max show. Superman Legacy, a theatrical film, not starring Henry Cavill. Lanterns, a live-action HBO Max show. Please. Boo?
Not starring Henry Cavill?
Oh, I see. Yeah, well, yeah. I get what you're saying. The Authority, theatrical film. Paradise Lost, a live-action HBO Max show. The Brave and the Bold, theatrical film. Booster Gold, there you go, Will. A live-action HBO Max show. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, theatrical film, which is supposed to be extremely hardcore. Elon Musk would approve. And Swamp Thing, theatrical film.
Can I just say, I'm just going to jump in because I've already said it. Booster Gold is the best character that nobody knows anything about. Of all those characters, he is really an amazing character. We I love Wolverine, but he's had a movie. He's not in the Marvel universe. I'm looking forward to that coming over hopefully soon. But Booster Gold is one of my favorite characters. That and The Question are the two characters that I have a very soft spot for, who are not very well known and will take a lot for them to get their own feature. But I love it if they're doing a show of Booster Gold, because he is absolutely awesome.
And James Gunn alluded to the notion that Booster Gold is sort of a story about imposter syndrome, and that he's kind of like a doofus. Can you explain to us like what the character of Booster Gold is all about?
Yeah, so there
in 10 seconds or less.
Yeah. With all comics, there's various versions, but let me sort of try to boil it down as much as possible. Basically, there's a future guy who's a star, and he completely sells out, and then he finds a time traveling device, and he figures this might be a good way of recapturing his fame and fortune. So he goes back into the past with future tech and tries to be a big superhero so that he can show off to everyone and reclaim his glory. Sort of like the high school quarterback who's like now pumping gas and wants to go back to being the high school quarterback. So it's that kind of thing.
Gotcha. A loser from the future who uses his basic future technology to come back to today and pretend to be a superhero.
So that was actually the plot of Matt Frewer's episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. He played
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yep. All right, Gray, from these announcements from James Gunn, which one of these jumps out at you as being perhaps a little exciting? What are you looking forward to?
Amanda Waller. I absolutely love the fact, the idea of a show about a homicidal government agent who will stop at nothing to ensure the survival of humanity. I am all Waller all the time.
We saw her character as played by Viola Davis in Peacemaker, right?
And I love that
Suicide
Squad.
Yeah.
She was in the animated show as well, and it was great that she actually got to do the live action version, and she was great in the animated show.
Yes. Speaking of, because I'd like to, and throughout as well, but speaking of the DCAU, Jeffrey Combs played The Question.
Yes,
and
he was awesome.
He would make a perfect live action Question. So,
can't agree more.
Yeah.
And you touch on an interesting point there. Is one of the things that James Gunn took great pains to mention is that wherever possible, they want to use the same actors for the live action films as the voices for the animated features, because it's all part of the same universe. So that's going to be an interesting, that ties into our Batman animated series discussion from a few weeks ago. And was it Kevin Conroy who had passed away, and how he never really got to play, I think except with one minor exception, he never really got to play a live action Batman. That would have been an interesting parallel universe where the Berenstain Bears exist. All right, Tasia, we know this is your favorite department, and you've already expressed a bit of an opinion through some shock horror there. But what is there anything from these stories that we've heard about from James Gunn here in the DC universe, over the next 10 years that appeals to you whatsoever?
As a matter of fact, I'm going to boycott the Superman movie because Henry Cavill won't be in it. And frankly, that's a crime. It's a crime. Yep. That man in that suit and that pan of him in that suit.
He's like the Corvette of actors.
You tell me who's going to do it better. Nobody, because Henry Cavill is Superman. Bugs me very much.
I think they're faking us out. I'm hoping that we live in a universe where Gunn is like, okay, there's enough cachet here. Because they're talking about Henry Cavill doing like Warhammer 40K right now, which is like, I don't know, genetically engineered fascist super soldiers probably isn't going to go over that well, right? Maybe we should just stick with Superman.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe, on a side note, I can't believe some of those images of Warhammer 40K are actually in mainstream culture. They've got like the Iron Cross on some of their stuff. Like,
oh yeah.
He's a big Warhammer player.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And good at it apparently.
I don't know why I know this.
Dude, you can
The
measure-
board game or the role-playing game or the video game?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes,
Yeah.
both.
No, he's a tabletop player, and I think he was seen playing Space Marine. So on PC. He
This
builds
is
some
the
PCs.
power of Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
I even know what Warhammer is because of him. I moved him.
Well, that's a grim
You go
dark
to
future,
move
that's for sure.
him from Superman.
For my part, I have to admit I am most excited about. I'm very careful because once bitten, twice shy. Lanterns, the HBO Max series, because as I may have griped about before, Green Lantern was my guy. I grew up with the Hal Jordan Green Lantern, and this is a series that will feature both Hal Jordan and John Stewart, who is a latter era Green Lantern, and some other lanterns as well as basically space cops. And they're showing Hal Jordan latter day renditions of Hal Jordan with a mustache and beard, so he looks very dignified. Almost got some
Nice.
Doctor Strange vibes going on here. I'm cautiously optimistic. Don't make it funny. Love Ryan Reynolds, Hal Jordan, not a humorous character.
Adapt to Blackest Night.
Yes.
Adapt
So,
Blackest Night.
please, James Gunn, you're my only hope. But in general, are we optimistic about this new approach as opposed to? I mean, they're also doing the Batman 2. That's what the other one of the four that they're staying the course on, and then everything else they're still going to have like little side stories, but they're going to brand them as such, so people know what's the main universe and what are going to be their little exploratory side stories. Yeah, Elseworlds. Gray, you optimistic?
Anyone that can rock hair like James Gunn, yeah, I'm sure he's got it. So let's do it.
Gotcha.
I'm good.
Fair enough. Will?
I'm gonna give him a chance. I mean, I think it's better than what they're doing. I mean, they're kind of just going aimlessly, so might as well have a strategy and actually stick to it. So
we'll see, and then maybe eventually we'll have a cage match between Kevin Feige and James Gunn, and see how it all pans out. And Tasia,
that's actually a
can you find
episode.
Yeah.
Tasia, will you be able to find it in your heart to forgive James Gunn?
No.
All right. Well, we'll see. More to follow on that front. All right. Very quickly, our picks of the week before we wrap up, and let's start with who's in the list here. Let's start with you, Tasia.
My pick is a Netflix docuseries on Bernie Madoff. It's called Madoff, the Monster of Wall Street. And it's very good. It's like 4 or 5 episodes, I think. Because like we all know the story, but I don't think I really knew like the whole history of it and just the insane lengths he went to trick people and hide this from everybody. So it's very good. A lot of reenactments, but like it's well done. So it's my recommendation of the week.
Nice. So this is definitely Will Silver territory in the documentaries. Will, did you talk about this one before?
No, I haven't seen this one, but
she beat you to it.
Now that I've seen it, seen her recommendation, I definitely want to check it out.
You'll like it. You'll like it.
Right up my alley.
All right, Gray, how about you?
I've got an album here from Dean Blunt. It's actually available on WeTransfer right now. 7 tracks. It's free. Go check it out. Good times.
And what style of music would you say Dean Blunt is
I'm gonna let you
purveying
for yourself.
Oh,
it's electronic music.
Okay, I'm in. And so that's free, and that's on God, I haven't heard WeTransfer in ages, so that's still around and a great way to distribute free music. All right, that's one of my favorite things about the show is checking out new stuff from all our recommendations to each other. And lastly, Will, what's your momentous pick?
So it's a show called Extraordinary, and I have to say this is mostly coming from my wife. I've watched a bit with her, but she's watched the whole thing already because she's got some free time on her hands as she recuperates from some things. So she's watched the whole thing without me because I'm busy working. But yeah, no, I'm interested in checking out more. It's basically it's sort of like a real world thing, but if people had powers, there are a bunch of inappropriate sex forward jokes, which I think everyone here would appreciate. Tristan, there's a moment where I was watching with her, and I was like, oh, Tristan will find that hilarious. So I'm not going to spoil it for you, but you'll know the moment when you watch it. It's in the first episode. So I do recommend checking it out. It's on Apple Plus, or no, Disney Plus, sorry. But I could only find that listing on Hulu that I put in under the recommends. But yeah, it's a British show. It's only 6 episodes, so she watched the whole season in like a day, which is the quality of British shows, is that they have a purpose and they do a few episodes, and that's the season.
I thought it sounded familiar because we actually watched the first episode of that a few days ago. Stephanie had stumbled across it somehow, and she said, "Oh, we thought that we would watch that." And you're right; it is very blue at times, but it's fun. It's definitely worth a watch. There's definitely some LOL moments there, and yeah, world where everyone has a power, but our protagonist, she has not yet discovered hers. So yeah. I think, but Gray, both you and Tasia might enjoy this. It's definitely.
I see that there's a character named Jizzlord. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
My pick of the week is. Where did it go now? Where did it go?
I think we should unpack that first.
Nope. No, I don't think we should. I think we should not. I think we should move right along.
Yeah,
that is the worst kind of present. So I don't want to unpack that one. Surprise. So my momentous pick this week is for a movie I saw in the theater, because that's what I do, and it was for a little movie, I believe it's James Wan, called Megan. And this is on the Blumhouse, from Blumhouse Productions, and it is touches on a theme that we've discussed a fair bit in the last year on Momentous Live, AI. But what if that AI took the form of a life-size robotic doll that could be the new best friend for your adopted daughter? If say
dead adopted daughter.
Say again.
Soon to be dead adopted daughter.
So. Yeah, it's ostensibly a horror film. It's like horror thriller, not super duper scary per se. There's a couple of jump scares in it, but it was surprisingly funny, actually. It's like, I mean, it's a little bit of like Child's Play from the 80s, with Chucky. I'm not sure how well that whole series holds up, but there's just something about the way that the Megan doll is animated. It's Uncanny Valley, but on purpose, and the animation it's so seamless because it looks like she's got a silicone face, but it's because it's artificial. It all kind of works, and she's got attitude, and like literally LOL'd a few times during that movie, and it's already on streaming. I saw it in the theater a couple of days after it was on streaming, but whatever floats your boat in terms of how to watch it, it's a strong recommend from me on there.
Was this a prequel to Battle Angel Alita?
You'd think, right? Her eyes are a little smaller. It's before she got the eye upgrade.
Right.
All right. And only one project to talk about this week, and that is Tasia. What's your weekly YouTube video on this week?
Oh, it was a Gmail one, as usual. And it was on just how to use Gmail offline. So if you're a noob and you don't know how to do that, this video is for you.
So can you just explain that just a little bit? Because some of us may be used to traditional email client software, whether it was on our computers or on our portable devices, whereby we could still read, access and read email that we've downloaded to our device, but we wouldn't be able to reply necessarily. But Gmail being accessed by the web, how does that work? Being able to use it offline again, just for reading and sorting and whatnot until you're online again. Where is it actually storing your data?
So it is storing it to your device,
mm-hmm.
And you can decide how many days worth you want to store. I think it's like up to 90 days, and you can technically send emails, but it's just going to go into an outbox folder, and then the next time you get online, it'll automatically send it for you.
Like we
And you can
recommend.
decide if you can decide if you want to download attachments with that when you're downloading like your Gmail inbox. But it's just a handy little thing to do. And by the way, your Gmail app does it automatically for you unless you toggle it off. So it's handy for when you're traveling.
All right. Well, we'll have to, and where, check that out. Where can people find your videos, Tasia?
YouTube.com/Tasia Custodi.
Excellent.
Nice.
And I missed it, but we actually had a little comment from friend of the show, Ged Smythe, when we were talking about all those vehicles there. He said, great looking machine. That GT has some great specs. So that's a little +1 in, I think, in my category, because he's referring to the Kia EV6 GT. And again, this is the renaissance of Kia in the last few years, really doubling down on the EVs and getting, after they stole a designer or two from Audi, that's really helped up their game too. So Ged's on Team Kia now, even though he was a Mini guy and a Ford guy before that, right? All right. And now he's a Danby guy. Check out danby.com for all your finest large and small home appliances. We'll have Ged back on eventually. All right, folks, we did it. Another one in the books. You can find out more about Momentous at momentus.tv/links. Tasia, Gray, well, it's great to have the band back together again. We hope you and everyone else out there in internet land, we hope your week is truly momentous. Oh, come on. I hit the wrong button.
What?
I should retire.
That's great.
I can't even end the stream.
Is it still live?
Still live.
Still live.
It's not letting me hit the button.